What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Today we're going to be covering a community topic that I think needs to be said, but like a lot of the times when we cover things like this in our channel, it might make you a bit upset. So try to hang with me on this, and let's come to a conclusion together. We don't make videos just to tick people off and to push them the wrong way. We actually do want to do our best to make the community a better place, despite sometimes us being critical of the game. We love the game, we just want to make the best game possible, which is why sometimes we're critical on things like this. So today, we're talking about the DPS burden. And what that is understanding when you pick DPS, the responsibility that you have to your team. First, before we get into that, let's talk about every other role on the team. Generally speaking, it's much more easy to get a reliable output to the team in every other role. Tank, healer, support, whatever. Even if you're playing an average Lucio, if you hit heals or speed at decent timings, you're going to guarantee value. As long as you don't charge in and die as Reinhardt, shielding for your team guarantees some value. Now, obviously, big plays can be made out of these positions. You can be a playmaker in a lot of these roles. And I, of course, made the "that hero is easy" fallacy video, implying that there is so much depth to every hero. They're all hard, but they're not all equally hard. And with that being said, DPS is the hardest in the game to guarantee impact onto a match. The way Overwatch is balanced, it is very much structured to be an esports type game. Very reminiscent of real sports. Anyone who's a fan of these sports understands that there typically is role positions in these games, and it doesn't simply work to have everybody be a star player, because what you need to do is set up your star players to be able to succeed. Overwatch functions this exact same way. And yes, technically the DPS players are the stars, and that's going to be a very alluring role for a lot of players to play, but I think it's important that we all as a community realize what that means. The players that pick those roles have to be playing well. And that's not to say everybody's perfect all the time and you always play well, but you have to respect that in order to build a balanced team comp that works, not everybody gets to be that star player. And I think it's a little goofy how sometimes in the community it seems like whoever picks first at the loading screen gets to play DPS, regardless of what the matchups are, regardless of what the map is, regardless of the pieces that you have to work with on your team. When in reality, if you want to win, the DPS role always should go to the best player in your room if you can help it, or at least a player that's going to have a hot hand. To be honest, I don't play DPS that much in this game, and I almost don't get a chance to, because if I go with the simple rule that, well, if they pick DPS first, they get it, I end up playing Ana and Winston and Lucio and Phil roles, core fundamental team role-playing roles that are necessary for the team, but it puts the game in my teammates' hands, assuming that they're going to be able to hit shots. When this happens oftentimes, and a lot of you have seen this on our streams, it almost requires us to make a decision. Do we ask our teammates to switch off DPS? Do we ask them to be flexible? Do we ask them to realize that they're not getting any production out of their McCree, Widowmaker, Hanzo pick? We're not effectively following up on the Junkrat trash damage that they're spewing out, and something has to change. It's very difficult to navigate through this because it seems that anytime you ask anybody to switch roles or rework the comp, it automatically gets labeled as toxic no matter what. And what I think is even more backwards, a percentage of the community seems to expect that everyone else on the team should just allow that DPS player to play whatever they want, and you have to fill in. There's no point to try to reason with them. There's nothing you can say to them because you might hurt their feelings. To me, this is like the most counterintuitive way to go about this entirely. I'd much rather be playing in a community that plays the game in the way that we play it, where if we're not doing something right and someone calls us out for it, we don't start some massive argument. We don't say, no, I've got gold damage, get good. If we're not playing well, we make a mistake or someone calls us out for not doing something right, we say, my bad, and we try to fix it and improve. But it seems like anytime you try to strategize with randoms, it automatically gets labeled as flame. But isn't that kind of backwards? Why are the people who are trying to improve the team comp immediately labeled as toxic, yet the player that keeps whiffing three-point shots, who in his mind thinks he's Steph Curry, but in reality is just handing the game to the other team, is just minding his own business, so to speak. I really need you guys to explain this to me, because it seems like I don't understand, and maybe we don't fit in with our mentality of this game. The last game that we played was Counter-Strike, which had more of an automatic pretense of being entirely competitive. And maybe even in the competitive playlist, players still kind of treat Overwatch like it's a casual game or something. And it's really not. If you pick DPS in this game, you are sending a signal to the rest of your team that you think you can be the star player, which may be fine. I don't mind playing Winston or Ana or whomever for you, for us to win. I just want to win the game. But we've all been in games where it's been blatantly obvious that nothing's dying. You're not getting any production out of your DPS. And I think instead of demonizing the people who are requesting swaps and requesting a rethink of our strategy as toxic or flaming, the onus should be on the DPS player to actually be getting impact kills on the board. Because despite what everybody thinks, Overwatch is not some casual game, especially not in the competitive playlist. It's one of the most difficult FPS esport games from like the past 20 years or something. Some of the character skill set is mostly game sense, yes, but not from the DPS standpoint. So you can't be taking that responsibility lightly. I got a lot more videos in the works about structuring effective team comps, but ultimately what it always comes down to is setting up and keeping alive your DPS players for them to shine. But the problem is in solo queue, if we have this expectation that anybody who just picks DPS has the right to it whether they play well or not, it can sometimes feel impossible to make effective team comps, because no matter how well you heal, no matter how well you Winston or Reinhardt main tank, if your DPS can't hit enough shots, you will just simply lose. Especially if these ultimate changes go through, because right now, a lot of the role players can somewhat carry the game with good ultimate usage, namely nano boosting a tank for instance, or hitting sound barriers at the crucial moment. But if Blizzard does go ahead with nerfing ultimate charge rates, that means that a smaller percentage of team fights are going to be dictated by ultimate timings, and far more of the game is going to be put into the hands of the DPS players in what I'd call the regular team fights, which is going to make it even more obvious when you're not getting effective DPS. Now don't get me wrong guys, I'm definitely not saying just always blame your DPS. It is the responsibility of the team comp to make sure that you're structuring around what your DPS is doing. I'm never the type of player to automatically say that Bastion's not going to work, that Junkrat's not going to work. That's not how I play the game. Whatever you and your randoms are going to pick, you should try your best to synergize around it, but be reasonable about it. If you have a player who's insistent on playing Widow and you haven't even seen them try Widow yet, your only option is to set up that Widow to be effective. If they have Genji diving her, you better have a Winston. If they have a Winston diving her, you better have a Reaper or Hog. And if that still doesn't work, then at the very least you can say to that Widow player, everything's set up around you and we're still losing, can you please switch? But I think a lot of the time, as long as we're all honest with ourselves, players that are reasonable to discuss with you about the situation oftentimes are more self-reflective than people that aren't going to respond to you at all. Because in those games it feels like you can't win anyway, but at the very least if you have a dialogue, at least you can construct a team comp that can work. If you yourself are a DPS player, there is no shame in being honest about your performance. There's nothing more humbling than saying I'm not getting enough production on this DPS, someone else swap with me. Or better yet, simply go to a pick that props up your other DPS. Typically most teams are in a 2-2-2, but the secret about Overwatch is you don't always have to be in a 2-2-2. What you have to do is build a comp that facilitates your DPS to stay alive and be effective. Despite what the other team has and what you think they might be countering you, going a more reliable hero that you can guarantee value out of, that can at least support a DPS player in your team, will always yield you better results than stubbornly staying on McCree or Hanzo on like 20% accuracy, having little to no impact in the team fight. Swap off those heroes to go into a triple tank, which is very strong in the current meta. Pop on a hybrid pick like Mei, who can play in the front line, get a lot of utility out of her wall, at least guarantee some stall and a really big, powerful ultimate. Or Soldier Zenyatta, even if it puts you into the triple support category, as characters like those have a guaranteed stable output onto the team. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this. I know this is a bit of a controversial issue, but I wanted to clear it up because our stream's been growing, and it seems to be a more frequent occurrence that some people think, especially when I or someone else from the Overwatch crew communicates with randoms that we're playing with on stream, that we're not aiming to be toxic, we're aiming to win, and we're aiming to be honest. We're just as critical about everything else as we are on ourselves, and we would hope everyone could do the same thing. You can't win if your DPS doesn't have output, but also if the rest of your team isn't confident in you on that role. One of the biggest misconceptions in Overwatch is that when things aren't dying, one common phrase is, we need more DPS, which couldn't be further from the truth. Typically what's needed is either better focus fire or better production out of your current DPS, which either could be that they're not performing or you're not supporting them properly, one of the two. If you start to get into the 3 and 4 DPS category, your team comps become straight garbo and get countered incredibly easy by a competent team comp. But we don't have to resort to all that if we all can be a little bit more honest about our own performance and be more willing to negotiate a constructive team comp that allows players with the hot hand to get in the game. Don't be a selfish ball hog. Know when to pass. I hope this makes sense and you enjoyed the video. Please check out our Discord server at every rank and every platform. Follow us on Twitter for stream announcements and updates. Please like the video if you did enjoy. It really does help us out. Subscribe for more. We upload each and every day, and we stream each and every day. We've gotten partnered on Twitch. We got sick emotes rolling in, and we're looking to drastically increase our stream hours. So be sure to go follow us on Twitch, as well as set up for email notifications, because although our streams will likely be on and around when we upload videos now, we're going to be streaming even more than that as we expand our streaming schedule. Our numbers in there have been growing, so you're going to want to check it out. We've got a really fun chat community. We're really happy with it, and I think if you haven't seen it before, you'll like it too. Well, that's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.